All right, so Rahm Emmanuel, the former mayor of Chicago, has been out of the news for a while now, and that was because Biden basically was trying to give this push at the beginning of his administration to find a spot for Rahm Emmanuel to be included in his administration, and there was a significant amount of blowback, so it seemed like he kind of eased off the pedals there, and there was a significant gap that we stopped talking about Rahm Emmanuel, thank fucking God. But now, unfortunately, we have to talk about this motherfucker again because Biden has nominated Rahm Emmanuel as his ambassador to the world's third largest economy in Japan. Okay, so I'm just going to give you a little breakdown here. I'm going to give you some of the reasons why Rahm Emmanuel is an absolute piece of shit who doesn't deserve any government position whatsoever. And then I'm going to give you some takes from some of the members of the squad and then tell you how we can do something about this potentially. So first of all, Rahm Emmanuel will be remembered as Chicago's murder mayor. So I'm going to go ahead and leave this article down in the description if you want to read it in its entirety. But I'm just going to give you some of the highlights because I think this is a pretty good breakdown of how shitty a mayor he actually was when he was in charge of one of the country's largest cities. So they say in this article, this anti-public education crusade, which is one of the things that he chose to attack during his administration, is public education. This anti-public education crusade is also where Emmanuel suffered one of his biggest political defeats when in 2012, Chicago teachers went on a historic strike and with overwhelming public support successfully beat back the mayor's attacks on their pay, benefits, and ability to focus on classroom instruction rather than standardized tests. And that strike, the largest in the United States at the time, had seen in a quarter century, left an indelible stain on Rahm Emmanuel's political legacy. Despite his best efforts at rebranding, Emmanuel will be remembered as the mayor who advanced corporate interests and an agenda of austerity at the expense of Chicago's working class residents. And they continue, there were no empty jabs. At the time, Rahm Emmanuel had just announced a plan to close down 50 public schools in what would become the largest mass school closure in modern U.S. history. And this came after Emmanuel closed half of the city's mental health clinics in one fell swoop. These closures hit poor Latino and African-American areas the hardest and the very communities most in need of investment. So both attacking public education and also attacking healthcare and the healthcare system in Chicago, again, affecting, like they just said, the poorest and most vulnerable people in the city. And they continue, under Emmanuel's administration, the uniquely corrupt Chicago Housing Authority slowed construction of new public housing at an alarming rate, while the mayor massively increased property taxes and continued to oversee the widespread displacement of low-income families by wealthier residents across the city. And meanwhile, Emmanuel has enacted an austerity regime upon the city residents, privatizing assets and services from public transit cards to school custodial services, while raising taxes on everything from water and telephone services to garbage pickup. And yet, with Chicago facing some of the worst finances of any major U.S. city, the mayor has offered a whopping tax break to mega corporations, including a $2 billion giveaway to Amazon to attract the company's new headquarters. And partially as a result of these overtures to corporate scions, Emmanuel was bestowed the nickname Mayor 1%, just to give you an idea of who he actually represents. And Amish Patel, executive director of the Grassroots Collaborative, a Chicago-based coalition of social justice organizations, says, quote, Rahm Emmanuel was always Wall Street's mayor. He pushed forward flawed economic policies that have resulted in skyrocketing violence and massive displacement of black families. And now we're going to get to the even worse part, and I'm sure many of you guys are already aware of the cover-up of the murder of Laquan McDonald under his leadership in Chicago. So the bloodshed in Chicago is incomparable with other major cities. In recent years, the Windy City has seen gun deaths totals that exceed the numbers of murders in Los Angeles and New York combined just last month. Again, this is from 2018. Chicago saw the worst weekend of violence in years, to which Emmanuel responded by blaming not systemic inequalities, but a lack of, quote, a value system and a moral compass, again, trying to make it an individualized issue and blame it on individuals within the society other than blaming it on the material conditions within the society, which again, he was attacking at full throttle, whether it was public health services or whether it was public education or whether it was infrastructure and transportation. He was a neoliberal pushing austerity through and through, and then turns around and blames some of the poorest and most vulnerable people for the situation that he had caused. And they continue, along with the linking culpability of lack of morals, Emmanuel's response to the crisis has been to invest more resources into policing rather than mental health services, education, community programs, and other social services that could help prevent the violence in the first place. And yet the Chicago Police Department itself is a documented perpetrator of such violence. A shocking Justice Department report last year revealed rampant use of excessive force, abuse, and civil rights violations throughout the Chicago Police Department, and the most high high-profile one that they talk about here of police misconduct is the 2014 murder of Laquan McDonald by Chicago police officer Jason Van Dyke. And the video of the killing, which shows Van Dyke shooting McDonald an excruciating 16 times, was withheld from the public ahead of Emmanuel's re-election in 2015, which many critics have deemed a cover-up orchestrated by the mayor's administration. So, cutting public education, cutting public health services, destroying public transportation, and covering up the murders by your police officers of innocent civilians and citizens under your constituency. So that's who Rahm Emmanuel actually is, okay? A complete and utter piece of shit who doesn't deserve any position in government, even if it is just an ambassadorship to Japan, okay? And so I want to give you some takes from the squad here. So Rashida Tlaib saying, Rahm Emmanuel, as the mayor of Chicago, covered up the murder of Laquan McDonald. That alone should disqualify him from any public position. If you believe Black lives indeed matter, then the Senate must reject this appointment immediately, and she's absolutely right. And Cori Bush said, Rahm Emmanuel, again, covered up the murder of Laquan McDonald. He must be disqualified from ever holding an appointed position in any administration, and she urges you to call your senator and tell them to vote no, and there's a phone number if you want to do that. And Mondaire Jones adding in here, as the mayor of Chicago, Rahm Emmanuel helped, again, cover up the murder of Laquan McDonald. In any other line of work, he'd never have a job again. This is a travesty. Senators of good conscience must not vote to confirm him. So they're all absolutely right. Nobody of any good conscience should be voting to confirm this man. He's an absolute monster, and he proved that over his tenure as the mayor of Chicago. And so here's just a little thing. I'm going to link this also down in the description that RootsAction is putting together to email your senators, and they make it really easy for you. And they basically put an outline here that you can use for yourself and send it to whoever your representative is. Because listen, there needs to be a swift and firm pushback to this guy being nominated to this position, just as a matter of principle. This guy, again, is an absolute piece of shit who doesn't belong near public service in any way, shape, or form.